The ship landed on the throne world of the Volrani Empire with a soft hum. Tejo stood near the window and watched the purple sky stretch above the alien city. Towers of black stone rose high into the clouds. Flying vehicles moved between them like insects. Everything looked cold and powerful. He was not supposed to be here. 3 months ago, he was just a translator working at a small human outpost near the border. But the Volrani had attacked 5 human colonies in 1 year. Thousands had died. The war was coming fast, and humanity was not ready. So the leaders made a deal. They would send a human to marry into the Volrani royal family. It was an old tradition among the Volrani. Marriage meant alliance. It meant peace. Te-Ho had volunteered. He had no family left. No wife, no children. If his life could save millions, then it was worth it. The door of the ship opened. 2 Volrani guards stood waiting. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were solid black, and their faces showed no emotion. They looked at Tejo like he was a small animal. "Human," one of them said. "Follow." Tejo picked up his bag and walked down the ramp. The air was thin and cold. It smelled like metal and something sweet he could not name. He took a deep breath and followed the guards. The palace was even larger than it looked from the sky. The walls were made of dark crystal that reflected light in strange ways. Tejo saw his own face in them, small and pale against the massive structure. He looked tired. He felt tired. They walked for a long time through empty hallways. Finally, they reached a great door made of gold and black stone. The guards pushed it open, and Tejo stepped inside. The throne room was huge. Hundreds of Volrani stood along the walls, watching in silence. At the far end, on a throne made of bones and gems, sat Queen Lirith. She was beautiful in a dangerous way. Her skin was pale gray, almost silver. Her 4 arms rested on the sides of her throne. Her eyes were deep purple, and they looked at Tejo with cold curiosity. A crown of black metal sat on her head, shaped like sharp blades. Tejo walked forward. He could feel every eye on him. He heard whispers in the Volrani language. He understood some of them. So small. Is this really their champion? Humans are weaker than I thought. He ignored them. He stopped at the bottom of the steps that led to the throne and bowed his head. "Queen Lirith," he said. "I am Tejo. I come on behalf of the Human Federation to accept the terms of peace." The queen did not move. She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was not a kind smile. "You are the one they sent?" she asked. Her voice was smooth and cold. "I asked for a warrior, a champion, someone worthy of joining our bloodline. And they sent this?" Laughter echoed through the room. Tejo kept his head high. "I am what they sent," he said simply. The queen leaned forward. "Do you know what you are agreeing to, human? You will marry into my family. You will face the trials that all grooms must pass. If you fail, you die. If you run, your people die. Do you understand?" "I understand," Tejo said. "And you are not afraid?" Tejo thought about the question. He was afraid. Of course, he was afraid. But fear did not matter. Only his mission mattered. "Fear does not change what must be done," he said. The queen sat back. Something flickered in her purple eyes. Interest, maybe? Or amusement? "We shall see," she said. She waved one of her hands. "Bring forward the princess." A side door opened. A woman walked out, surrounded by Volrani guards. She was human. Tejo's heart jumped in surprise. She was young, maybe 25 years old. Her hair was black and long, tied back in a simple braid. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a deep sadness. She wore a dress of silver cloth, beautiful, but clearly not her choice. "This is Yuna," the queen said. "She's from one of the colonies we conquered 3 years ago. She has lived in my palace since then. She will be your bride, if you survive the trials." Yuna looked at Taeho. Their eyes met. He saw pain in her gaze, but also something else. Hope, maybe. A small, fragile hope. "Hello," Taeho said quietly. "Hello," she replied. Her voice was soft. The queen clapped her hands. "Enough. The human will be taken to his chambers. The first trial begins tomorrow at dawn. I suggest you rest, little human. You will need all your strength." The guards moved forward. Taeho allowed them to lead him away. But before he left the throne room, he looked back one more time. Yuna was still watching him. He gave her a small nod, a silent promise. "I will not fail. I will get us both out of here." His chambers were simple but clean. A bed, a table, a window that looked out over the alien city. Taeho sat on the bed and closed his eyes. He thought about the trials. He did not know what they would be. The Velrani were known for their strength and their cruelty. They believed that power was everything. They looked at humans and saw only weakness, but they did not understand humans. Not really. Humans were not the strongest. They were not the fastest. They did not have claws or fangs or forearms. But humans had something else. Something that had carried them across the stars and through 1,000 wars. They had will. They had the ability to keep going when everything said they should stop. They had the stubbornness to stand up again after being knocked down. Tae-ho opened his eyes and looked at his hands. They were just normal hands. Nothing special. But they had built ships that crossed galaxies. They had held weapons that won impossible battles. They had reached out to help strangers and loved ones alike. Tomorrow, the trials would begin. The Velrani expected him to fail. They expected him to break. They were wrong. Teo lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. Outside, the purple sky grew dark as night fell on the throne world. In the palace, the Velrani laughed and drank and talked about the weak little human who would surely die. But in his small room, Taeho slept peacefully. He knew what he was. He knew what humans could do. And soon, the Velrani would learn too. The sun rose over the throne world, painting the purple sky with streaks of orange and gold. Taeho woke early. He washed his face with cold water and put on the simple clothes the guards had left for him. Then he waited. The door opened at exactly dawn. 4 guards stood outside. "Human," one said. "It is time." Taeho followed them through the palace. They walked for a long time, downstairs and through tunnels, until they reached a massive arena. It was open to the sky, with seats rising high on all sides. Thousands of Velrani filled those seats. Talking and pointing. In the center of the arena stood a platform. Queen Lyrith sat on a raised throne at one end, surrounded by her advisors. Yuna sat nearby, her hands folded in her lap. She looked at Taeho as he entered, and he saw worry in her eyes. A tall Velrani warrior stood in the center of the platform. He was even bigger than the others, with scars covering his gray skin and muscles that looked like carved stone. He smiled when he saw Taeho, showing sharp teeth. "This is General Vorak," the queen announced. Her voice echoed across the arena. "He will explain the first trial." Vorak stepped forward. He looked down at Taeho with obvious disgust. "The first trial is the trial of endurance," he said. "It is simple. You will walk. You will keep walking until you cannot walk anymore. No food, no water, no rest. The last one standing wins." He pointed to a circular track that ran around the edge of the arena. "You will walk that path. 20 other Velrani warriors will walk with you. They are the finest soldiers in our empire. Each one has trained for years. Each one has passed this trial before. Teho looked at the track. It was long. Walking it once would take several minutes. Walking it for hours, for days, without stopping. Do you understand, human? Vorak asked. I understand, Teho said. The general laughed. Good. Then let us begin. 20 Velrani warriors entered the arena. They were all tall and strong, with 4 arms and powerful legs. They looked at Teho like he was already dead. A horn sounded. The trial began. Teho started walking. He set a steady pace, not too fast and not too slow. The Velrani warriors walked beside him and behind him. Some of them were talking and laughing, making jokes about the human who thought he could compete with them. The first hour passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The air grew hot. Teho felt sweat running down his back, but he kept walking. The second hour passed. Some of the Velrani warriors had stopped talking. The heat was affecting them too, but they kept moving, their pride pushing them forward. By the third hour, Teho's legs were starting to burn. His throat was dry. He wanted water badly, but he kept walking. How are you still moving, human? One of the warriors asked. Your legs are so short. Your body is so weak. Teho did not answer. He saved his breath for walking. The fourth hour came and went. The fifth. The sixth. The sun moved across the sky and began to set. The purple evening light spread over the arena. One of the Velrani warriors stumbled. He fell to his knees, breathing hard. Guards came and carried him away. The crowd cheered. Teho kept walking. More hours passed. Night came. Torches were lit around the arena. The crowd thinned as people went home to sleep, but May stayed to watch. By midnight, 5 more warriors had fallen. 15 remained, plus Teho. His body was screaming at him now. Every step hurt. His feet were bleeding inside his shoes. His muscles were on fire. But he kept walking. He thought about Yuna. He thought about the human colonies that would be destroyed if he failed. He thought about everyone counting on him. And he kept walking. Dawn came again. The purple sky turned orange and gold. Queen Lyrith returned to her throne. She looked down at the track with narrowed eyes. 8 Velrani warriors were still walking. And so was Teho. Impossible, she whispered. The second day was worse than the first. The heat was brutal. Teho's vision started to blur. His legs moved on their own, driven by will alone. 3 more warriors fell during the morning. 2 more in the afternoon. By evening, only 3 Velrani remained, along with Teho. The crowd was silent now. They watched with wide eyes as the small human continued to walk, step after step, refusing to fall. What is he? Someone whispered. On her throne, Queen Lyrith leaned forward. Her purple eyes were fixed on Teho. She had never seen anything like this. The human should have collapsed hours ago, days ago, but he was still moving. Night fell again. One of the 3 remaining warriors fell. Then another. Only 1 Velrani remained. His name was Corvin, a veteran soldier who had won this trial 3 times before. He was barely standing, his 4 legs shaking with every step. Teho walked beside him. His face was pale. His lips were cracked. His eyes were half closed. But he was still walking. Why? Corvin gasped. Why will you not fall? Teho did not have enough strength to answer. He just kept walking. The third dawn came. Corvin took 1 more step. Then another. Then his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground. Teho stopped. He looked down at the fallen warrior. Then he looked up at Queen Lyrith. The arena was completely silent. Teho took 1 more step. Then another. Then he fell to his knees, finally allowing himself to stop. He won, someone said in the crowd. The human won. The words spread like fire. Soon everyone was talking, shouting, arguing. How could this be? How could a weak little human outlast the greatest warriors of the Volrani Empire? Queen Lyrith stood slowly. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were gripping the arms of her throne tightly. "The human has passed the first trial," she announced. Her voice was flat. "He will be given food and water and rest. The second trial will begin in 2 days." The guards came and helped Tejo to his feet. He could barely stand. They half carried him out of the arena. As he passed Yuna, she reached out and touched his arm. "Thank you," she whispered. Tejo managed a small smile. "One down," he said. 2 to go. In her throne, Queen Lyrith watched him go. Her mind was racing. She had expected the human to die in the first hour. Instead, he had outlasted every warrior she had. This was not right. This was not how it was supposed to be. Humans were weak. Everyone knew that. They had no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. They should be easy to break, but this human had not broken. He had kept walking when his body should have failed. He had refused to fall when every part of him was screaming to stop, for the first time in many years. Queen Lyrith felt something she did not like. She felt uncertain. She stood and walked to the window of her private chambers. The arena was empty now, the torches burning low in the morning light. "What are you, human?" she asked the empty room. Far away, in a small chamber, Tejo slept deeply. His body was broken and tired. But in his dreams, he was smiling. 1 trial down. The Volrani were starting to understand. Human might was not about muscles or claws. It was about something deeper. Something that could not be measured or weighed. It was about the will to never give up. 2 days passed quickly. Tejo spent most of that time sleeping and eating. His body was slowly healing. The bleeding on his feet stopped. The burning in his muscles faded. But he knew the next trial would bring new pain. On the morning of the second trial, a servant came to his room. It was a young Volrani female with soft blue skin and kind eyes. "The queen sends a message," she said quietly. "She says you may leave. She will call off the war. You do not have to face the second trial." Tejo looked up from his meal. "Why?" The servant shifted nervously. She says you have proven yourself. The first trial was enough." For a moment, Tejo considered it. He could leave now. The war would end. His mission would be complete. But then he thought about Yuna. If he left, she would stay here. A prisoner in this cold palace, alone among aliens who saw her as nothing. "No," he said. "I will finish what I started." The servant bowed and left. An hour later, the guards came to take him to the arena. The crowd was even larger than before. Word had spread about the human who would not fall. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Queen Lyrith sat on her throne, watching with cold eyes. Yuna was beside her again. When she saw Tejo enter the arena, her face filled with fear. General Vorak stood in the center of the platform. He did not look happy. "The second trial is the trial of pain," he announced. "It is simple. You will be hurt. You will keep being hurt until you beg for it to stop. The one who lasts the longest wins." He pointed to a metal chair in the center of the platform. It had straps for arms and legs. "You will sit there," Vorak said. "Our pain masters will use their tools on you. Burns, cuts, electricity, whatever they choose. You must not cry out. You must not beg. You must simply endure." Tejo looked at the chair. His stomach turned, but his face stayed calm. "I understand," he said. 5 Volrani warriors will take this trial with you," Vorak continued. "Each one has passed it before. Each one is trained to resist pain." 5 warriors entered the arena. They were different from the ones in the first trial. Smaller, leaner, with scars covering their bodies. These were not just soldiers. These were specialists in suffering. Who goes first? Vorak asked. I will, Teho said. A murmur went through the crowd. Vorak raised an eyebrow. Very well, human. Sit. Teho walked to the chair and sat down. Valrani servants strapped his arms and legs in place. He could not move. A painmaster approached. He was an old Valrani with white eyes and a belt full of strange tools. He selected a thin metal rod and held it up. This will heat to the temperature of melting iron, he said. It will touch your skin. You will feel pain like you have never known. When you want it to stop, simply say the word. The word is mercy. Teho looked at the rod. Then he looked at Yuna. She was watching him with tears in her eyes. He nodded. The painmaster pressed a button. The rod began to glow red, then orange, then white. Heat came off it in waves. He pressed it against Teho's arm. The pain was beyond words. It was like fire and lightning combined, shooting through his entire body. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Teho's muscles locked tight. His teeth clenched so hard they nearly cracked, but he did not cry out. He did not speak. The painmaster held the rod there for 10 seconds. Then he pulled it away. Teho's arm was marked with a deep burn. Impressive, the painmaster said. Most humans would have screamed. He selected another tool. A blade with a curved edge. Now we cut. The blade sliced across Teho's chest. Blood flowed. The pain was sharp and cold, different from the burning, but just as terrible. Teho stayed silent. More cuts. More burns. Electricity that made his whole body shake. Needles that pushed into his skin. Each new pain was worse than the last. The crowd watched in silence. Some turned away. Others leaned forward, unable to look away. On her throne, Queen Lyra's face was like stone. But her eyes never left Ho. An hour passed. The painmaster stepped back, breathing hard. Enough, he said. The human has passed. Guards released the straps. Teho stood slowly. Blood dripped from dozens of wounds. Burns covered his arms and chest. But he was still standing. Next, he said quietly. One by one, the Volrani warriors took their turns. The first lasted 40 minutes before he screamed for mercy. The second lasted 35. The third made it to 50 minutes. The fourth warrior was a female named Nira. She was small for a Velrani, but her eyes were hard and empty. She had taken this trial many times before. She lost in an hour and 10 minutes. Longer than Ho. The crowd cheered. Finally, someone had beaten the human. But the fifth warrior failed after only 20 minutes. His screams echoed through the arena. The human is tied with Nira, Vorak announced. They will both face the final round. Teho looked at Nira. She looked back at him with cold respect. You are stronger than I expected. Human, she said. Thank you, Teho replied. They both returned to the chairs. The painmasters came with new tools. Worse tools. Things that looked like they came from nightmares. The final round began. Pain beyond pain. Fire and ice and lightning all at once. Teho felt his mind trying to break apart. He felt the darkness at the edges of his vision, calling him to pass out, to give up. But he thought about why he was here. He thought about Yuna. He thought about the colonies. He thought about every person counting on Dot, and he held on. And Ira was struggling too. Her gray skin had turned pale. Her breath came in short gasps. Her four hands were clenched into fists. 20 minutes passed. 30, 40. Nira opened her mouth. She stopped herself. She would not say it. Her pride would not let her. But Teho saw the truth in her eyes. She was broken. She was only holding on by will. He understood. It was the same. 40-5 minutes. 50. Nira's body shook. A tear ran down her gray cheek. "Mercy," she whispered. The painmaster stopped. The crowd erupted in noise. Shouts and cheers and arguments filled the arena. Tae-ho sat in his chair, blood and burns covering his body, and he smiled. "The human wins," Vorik said. His voice was heavy with disbelief. "The human wins the second trial." Guards came and released Tae-ho from the chair. He could barely walk. Medical servants rushed forward to treat his wounds. As they led him away, he passed by Queen Lyrith's throne. She stood and walked down the steps until she was right in front of him. "How?" she asked quietly. Only Tae-ho could hear her. "How did you do that? No one has ever lasted that long. Not even our best warriors." Tae-ho looked at her with tired eyes. "Pain is just information," he said. "It tells your body to stop. But humans learned long ago that we can choose not to listen. We can push past it. We can survive anything, as long as we have something worth surviving for." He looked at Yuna. "I have something worth surviving for." Queen Lyrith followed his gaze. She looked at Yuna, then back at Tae-ho. "The final trial is in 3 days," she said. "It is combat. You will fight our greatest champion. He has never lost." Tae-ho nodded slowly. "Then it will be interesting." He turned and let the guards lead him away. Behind him, Queen Lyrith stood frozen, watching the small human walk out of her arena. She had thought the second trial would break him. She had thought pain would reveal his weakness. Instead, it had shown her something she did not want to see. The human was not weak at all. He was something far more dangerous. He was determined. Tae-ho woke in a soft bed surrounded by white light. For a moment, he thought he was dead. Then the pain hit him, and he knew he was still alive. Every part of his body hurt. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages. His chest was covered in healing patches. He could feel stitches in a dozen places, but he was alive. "You are awake." He turned his head. Yuna sat beside his bed, her eyes red from crying. When she saw him move, she reached out and grabbed his hand. "I thought you were going to die," she said. "When Raxum was hitting you, again and again, I thought, I am hard to kill," Tae-ho said. His voice was rough and weak. "Did we win?" "You won," Yuna said. "All 3 trials. No one in the history of the Empire has ever done that. The whole planet is talking about you." She helped him sit up against the pillows. The room was beautiful, with tall windows that looked out over the city. It was much nicer than his old chambers. "Where am I?" he asked. "The Royal Healing Ward," Yuna said. "The Queen ordered the best doctors to treat you. They said you should be dead. Your injuries were too severe. But your body kept fighting, kept healing. They had never seen anything like it." Tae-ho nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. And tomorrow." Yuna paused. "Tomorrow is the wedding ceremony. You have earned the right to marry into the royal family. You have earned me." The way she said it made Tae-ho look at her carefully. "Is that what you want?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and it was the first real smile he had seen from her. "When they first told me about the arrangement, I was scared," she said. "I thought they would send some politician. Some cold man who only cared about treaties and power. But then you came, and you fought. Not for glory, not for yourself. You fought for me. For our people." She squeezed his hand. "Yes," she said. "This is what I want." The next day, Tae-ho forced himself out of bed. The doctors protested, but he would not listen. He had come too far to miss this. The wedding ceremony was held in the great throne room. Thousands of Velrani filled the space, nobles and warriors and common people. They all wanted to see the human who had done the impossible. Tae-ho walked down the center aisle, wearing a suit of white and gold that the servants had prepared for him. He still moved slowly, his wounds pulling with each step. But he walked without help. At the far end, Queen Lirith stood waiting. Beside her was Una, dressed in a beautiful gown of silver and blue. She looked like a star fallen to earth. Taiho stopped before the throne and bowed. "Rise," Queen Lirith said. He rose and looked at her. For a long moment they just stared at each other. "I have been queen for 200 years, Lirith finally said. "I have seen wars and peace. I have seen champions rise and fall. I have seen species conquer galaxies and crumble to dust." She stepped closer to Taiho. "But I have never seen anything like you." The crowd was completely silent. "When you came here, I thought you were weak," she continued. "Your species has no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. By every measure we use, humans should be nothing." She shook her head slowly. "I was wrong." The admission sent a wave of whispers through the crowd. The Queen was never wrong. The Queen never admitted mistakes. "Human might is not in your bodies," Lirith said. "It is in your spirits. You do not give up. You do not surrender. You face impossible odds and refuse to fall. That is a power we Velrain never understood. That is a power we have no defense against." She turned to the crowd. "Let it be known," she announced. "The human race is no longer considered weak by the Volrani Empire. They are our equals. They are our allies. Any attack on human territory will be considered an attack on the Empire itself." The crowd erupted in noise. Some cheered. Some argued. But no one could deny what they had seen. The human had proven himself in ways that could not be questioned. Queen Lirith raised her hand for silence. "And now, we celebrate the union of our peoples. Taiho of Earth, step forward and claim your bride." Taiho walked to Una. She was crying, but they were happy tears. He took her hands in his. "I am not a great warrior," he said to her quietly. "I am not the strongest or the fastest. I am just a man who refused to quit." "That is enough," Una said. "That is more than enough." The ceremony was brief but beautiful. Volrani traditions mixed with human promises. At the end, Taiho and Una kissed, and the crowd cheered. Later that night, there was a great feast. Taiho sat at the high table beside Una and Queen Lirith. Food and drink flowed freely. Music filled the air. At one point, the Queen leaned over to speak to Taiho privately. "I must ask you something," she said. "When you were fighting Raxon, when your body was broken and bleeding, what kept you standing? What gave you that strength?" Taiho thought about the question. He looked at Una, who was talking happily with some Volring nobles. He looked around at the celebration, at the peace that had been won. "Fear," he said. The Queen frowned. "Fear? You were afraid?" "Always," Taiho said. "Every moment of every trial. I was terrified." "Then how?" "Courage is not the absence of fear," Taiho said. "It is acting despite it. I was afraid I would fail. I was afraid I would die. But I was more afraid of what would happen if I gave up. I was more afraid of losing her. Of losing everything." He smiled slightly. "That fear kept me standing when nothing else could." Queen Lirith sat back. She looked at Taiho with new eyes. "You are a strange creature, human," she said. "We all are," Taiho replied. "That is what makes us strong." As the night went on, Taiho stepped outside to the balcony. The purple sky was full of stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning, unaware that one man had changed the fate of millions. Una joined him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Home," he said. "And the future. What happens now?" "Now we live," Una said. "We build a life together. We help our peoples understand each other. And we show the galaxy that humans and Velrani can be friends." Taiho put his arm around her. She leaned into him. "I like that plan," he said. They stood there together, watching the stars. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued. The Voronoi Empire had learned a lesson it would never forget. Human might was not measured in muscles or weapons. It was measured in will, in stubbornness, in the refusal to surrender even when all hope was lost. And that was the most dangerous power in the universe. Teho smiled and held Yuna close. The war was over. Peace had won. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the galaxy, other species were beginning to hear the stories. Stories about a small, weak creature who had stood against impossible odds and refused to fall. Stories about humans. And they were afraid. The 3 days before the final trial were the longest of Teho's life. His wounds were healing, but slowly. The burns still ached. The cuts still pulled when he moved. But he forced himself to train anyway. He had a small room with enough space to move around. Every morning, he did stretches and exercises. He practiced the fighting styles he had learned years ago in the military. He knew it would not be enough to beat a Voronoi champion in a fair fight. But he had to try. On the second day, Yuna came to visit him. She entered his room quietly, looking over her shoulder to make sure no one had followed her. "You should not be here," Teho said. But he was glad to see her. "I had to talk to you," she said. She sat down on a chair across from him. "Do you know who you are fighting?" "The Queen's champion." "That is all Vorik told me." Yuna's face grew dark. "His name is Raxon. He is the greatest warrior in the Empire. He has killed over 100 enemies in single combat. He's almost 3 times your size, and he has 4 arms that move faster than your eyes can follow." Teho nodded slowly. "I expected as much." "You cannot win," Yuna said. Her voice cracked. "No one can beat Raxon. He is a monster. He enjoys killing. When he fights, he does not just defeat his enemies. He destroys them." Teho reached out and took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her. Her skin was warm and soft. "I am not trying to defeat him," he said quietly. Yuna looked confused. "What do you mean?" "In the first trial, I did not try to be the fastest. I just tried to keep walking. In the second trial, I did not try to feel no pain. I just refused to let it stop me." He smiled slightly. "In this trial, I do not need to win. I just need to not lose. That does not make sense." "It will," Teho said. "Trust me." Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "Whatever happens," she said, "thank you. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for not giving up." She left before Teho could reply. The day of the final trial arrived. The arena was packed with more Voronoi than Teho had ever seen. Every seat was filled. People stood in the aisles and hung from the railings. The whole empire had come to watch. Queen Lyrith sat on her throne, dressed in armor of black and silver. Today she was not just a queen. She was a judge of combat. Yuna sat beside her, her face pale with fear. Teho entered the arena wearing simple fighting clothes. No armor, no weapons. His wounds from the second trial were still visible on his skin. The crowd laughed when they saw him. He looked so small, so weak, so human. Then Raxon entered. The champion was a nightmare made flesh. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, with gray skin covered in scars and tattoos. His forearms were thick with muscle. Each hand held a different weapon. A sword, an axe, a mace, a chain with a spiked ball. His face was twisted into a permanent smile. His eyes were empty and cold. This was a creature who lived only for violence. "So this is the human everyone is talking about," Raxon said. His voice was deep and rough. "I am disappointed. I expected something impressive." Teho did not reply. He stood in the center of the arena and waited. Queen Lyrith stood. The rules of combat are simple. Fight until one cannot continue. There are no forbidden moves. There are no weapons restrictions. Death is permitted, but not required. She raised her hand. Begin. Raxon moved with impossible speed. In 1 second, he crossed the entire arena. His sword swung at Teho's head. Teho ducked. The blade missed by inches. He rolled to the side as the axe came down where he had been standing. The crowd roared. Raxon attacked again and again. Each strike was powerful enough to cut through stone. Each movement was faster than should be possible for something so large. Teho dodged. He blocked. He retreated. He did not attack because getting close meant death. He could only survive. 1 minute passed. 2, 3. Raxon was getting angry. He was used to killing his enemies in seconds. This human was making him work. Stand still. He roared. His mace swung in a wide arc. Teho jumped back, but not fast enough. The spiked ball caught his shoulder, tearing through flesh. Blood sprayed across the sand. The crowd cheered. First blood to the champion. Teho felt a 1-me. The pain was terrible. His left arm hung useless at his side. Raxon smiled and walked closer. There it is. The human shows his weakness. Soon you will beg, just like all the others. He raised his sword for the killing blow. Teho stood up. The crowd went silent. Raxon's smile faded. What? Teho looked at him with calm eyes. Blood ran down his arm and dripped onto the sand. But his legs were steady. His breathing was controlled. I am still standing, Teho said. Raxon screamed in rage and attacked. His 4 weapons moved in a storm of metal. Teho blocked what he could and took the hits he could not avoid. A cut across his chest. A bruise on his leg. A gash on his back. Each time he fell. And each time he stood back up. 10 minutes passed. 20, 30. The crowd was completely silent now. They had never seen anything like this. Raxon was landing hit after hit, but the human kept rising. Why? Raxon gasped. He was breathing hard. His 4 arms were getting tired. Why will you not stay down? Teho spat blood onto the sand. Because I cannot. He stood up again. Raxon attacked with new fury. He threw away his sword and grabbed Teho with all 4 hands. He lifted the human into the air and slammed him into the ground. The impact shook the arena. Dust flew everywhere. When it cleared, Teho was lying still. His body was broken. Blood pooled around him. The crowd held its breath. Slowly, impossibly, Teho moved. His hand pressed against the ground. His arm shook. His body screamed in protest. But he stood up. Raxon took a step back. For the first time in his life, there was fear in his eyes. What are you? He whispered. Teho could barely see. His vision was blurred with blood and pain. But he looked at Raxon and spoke clearly. I am human. He raised his fists. Raxon screamed and charged. He hit Teho with everything he had. Again and again and again. The human flew across the arena, crashed into walls, left trails of blood in the sand. But every time, he stood back up. 1 hour passed. Raxon was on his knees, gasping for air. His 4 arms hung limp. He had never fought this long. He had never worked this hard. And the human was still standing. I yield, Raxon said. The words echoed across the silent arena. I yield, he repeated. I cannot. I cannot break him. No one can break him. Queen Lyrith stood slowly. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. The human wins, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The human wins the final trial. The arena erupted. Screams and shouts and chaos. No one could believe what they had seen. In the center of the arena, Tejo finally let himself fall. His body had nothing left. But as he lay there in the sand, covered in blood, he smiled. He had done it. The trials were over, and he was still standing.